increase that people are freaking out over.
That's what EPCOR wanted down there.
For sure, we'll be happy to take care of it.
The percentage was, I want to say 300% increase, but it was just ridiculous too. It's across the board. Yeah.
Keith, you ready?
Yeah, whenever you are.
Who's running the show?
Captain, the assistant captain.
I guarantee you this, you don't want me doing it.
Ready?
I agree, me neither.
I don't have parliamentary procedure and I don't have a good mouth.
Chris?
Come on.
Chris? Should we wait for Tim or should we go ahead and start?
Tim is going, especially Mr. Chairman, Tim's going to remind the council.
Okay. Should we wait then? Okay.
Yeah, we need legal counsel here, that's for damn sure.
We are waiting for Director Walsh to get back to the meeting, to start the meeting. It would might take about a few minutes.
What?
Do you usually have it open to the agenda book? Is there? That's the agenda book, is it?
Once you get rid of that.
Okay, and if you want, hold on, I'll just copy it from here to your desktop.
I can work with it if it disappear.
It's weird, it doesn't have the.
There he is.
Deanna, I don't have my card yet. They haven't sent it to me yet, because it's not until next month.
Okay, when you have it, just send it to me.
I'll email it. I can get it.
Tim, are you ready? Are you ready? Call the February 14th, 2018 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Selberg?
Here.
Commissioner Brule?
Here.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
Commissioner Beller? Commissioner Beller? Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Gordon?
Here.
Vice Chairman Azarmi?
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Today we have a different meeting in two parts. Past few days, we lost our chairman, Chairman Carl Flouché, and we are all very sad about this. And the very first part of the meeting is going to be in his memory and his accomplishment. So with that, right after that, we're going to take a short break, and then we start the meeting. What I'd like to do is to open it up to the commissioners to state what they have. Like Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you. Yeah, Chairman Carl was I've known him professionally and worked with him a long time in Lake Havasu when I first came to Lake Havasu in the early 2000s, being in the real estate world and the development world. Carl was always there with a smile and a deep laugh for pretty much anything. And it was an honor to have worked with him over the years, professionally and socially, to have spent time with him and his family. So I am proud or honored to say that he certainly helped me further my career and get me involved in Mojave County and this commission. So I thank him for that deeply, and he'll be missed. He'll be missed around Havasu, and it's a sad day for sure. Thank you.
Well, I only met Carl after beginning on the commission, and he was a really a nice guy. What I liked about him is he knew how to run a meeting, and he'd take charge of this meeting, and that kind of kept things in control. The one time I did spend some time with him, though, is a couple months ago. There was a Planning and Zoning Commission down in Phoenix, and he and I attended that, and so we got a chance to sit and talk for a little bit and hang out, kind of, and just a nice guy, really nice guy. So, like Mike said, he's going to be missed.
Yeah, I echo everyone else's statements about how he'll be missed. I met Carl 6 years ago after getting on the board, and just a real good guy to be working around, and very professional, and he'll be missed.
Thank you. Commissioner Abbott.
Well, I would have to say, I agree with every comment that's been made already. But in addition to working with Carl was a friend of mine. We had some social things that we got involved with. He loved it when I got an elk and took him elk meat, and he and his wife both. And so I met Carl before he came on the commission, and then I served with him a few years back when he first come on. Then I was off, and I came back, and it's like he was just always a pleasure to talk to, no matter what you talked to him about. He was very professional, and Carl I would consider close to one of my best friends. Definitely in this kind of thing with planning and zoning, the commissioners and so forth, he was right there at the top. So we will sure miss him.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes, I didn't know Carl too well before coming on the commission, but it was a delight to meet him and share some experiences with him. And I know, being from Lake Havasu, he was very involved in a lot of volunteer work over the years, and we'd like to thank him for that. And he'll surely be missed. Thank you.
I just met Carl since I've been serving on the commission. He was very professional, very kind. He was a gentleman, and he had a gentle soul. He was very kind to me and generous with me because I was new, and he was just very understanding and warm and helpful. I will miss him very much. I think he ran a really great meeting, and he was a very kind and gentle man. Thank you.
Well, I had business relation with Carl. He was my real estate broker in Lake Havasu, a true professional. And then, of course, on the Planning and Zoning Commission for, I believe I've been involved for about 14 years. And obviously, Carl's been around, he was around for like 18 years or so as part of this commission. He always volunteered his time, a true professional, a good real estate broker, involved in small and large projects in Havasu and in Mojave County, a true professional. Definitely he will be missed from all of us. Again, more than anything else, once a month getting together, he made the meeting very pleasant. There was a time before that there were some issues with the commission. I'm talking about 20 years ago, 18 years ago, and Carl was able to bring everybody together to work as a team, and with his excellent sense of humor, he was able to do a great job for us, on that level. And I know Keith and I being right next to him for so many years, in a good way, I was anxiously waiting for him to have a mistake somewhere so I can tease him. And, we know that, we always did that, and he took it very well, and he was able to, really put a good face. So definitely we're going to miss him significantly. I know that up there, they found a good qualified land use
The system has
professional.
detected that this conference has a minimum number of participants and will attempt to close.
I thought that was Carl. I know that up there he's basically doing a good job as a real estate broker. And, if there is any land use ordinance up there, I'm sure he's heavily involved and he's going to be really helpful. So again, our condolences on behalf of the commission and staff to his wife Cheryl and his family. And again, he's going to be missed significantly. Commissioner Gordon is going to, on behalf of the staff and also the commission, take this flower with the cards. So those who haven't signed these cards, they can come and sign it. So Commissioner Gordon is going to take it to Cheryl right after the meeting. So again, thank you for those of you supervisors, Angus and Bishop, who participated, and other members that they joined us for this meeting. And in memory of celebration of his life and his service to Mojave County, we really appreciate you coming over. And I'm going to ask the staff members to say a word. I know Chris has been from day one with Carl, so if you want to join us, and then Director Walsh.
I obviously met Carl when he first came on board to the commission, and that was so long ago, I don't remember exactly when it was. But he has certainly been a knowledgeable source for us, and a real pleasure to work with. I think for the commission, he was stabilizing, and we certainly appreciated that. We are going to miss him very much.
Thank you. Director Walsh.
Chairman Azarmi, thank you. I don't know that I could say it any better than how it's been said. Chairman Fluchet was a very professional, but yet the words escape me. But it was great to be around. Just a great personality. He knew what needed to be done. He did his best to get it done, and he did it in a helpful and a happy way. He could always, I think it was mentioned, his laughter. He always had a good laugh. Always had a great attitude, and his passing is going to be a great loss to Mojave County. He did a great job in all his service that he did here. I had the pleasure of working with him on both sides of the table. Prior to coming to the county, I worked as a consultant and got to come before the commission, and he was always very fair and very open-minded to the different solutions and different issues that we faced, and he continued so, being on this side of the table. He was just a great man and a real pleasure to work with, so thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the floor if anybody wants to speak. Supervisor Bishop?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that Carl is really going to be missed. His professionalism, his big smile that he always had, and his service to the community. And I had no idea how much service that was until I read the article this morning in the Lake Havasu paper. But he not only ran a business, but he volunteered for everything. And I'm so honored and thankful that he found the time to also volunteer for our planning and zoning and be a commissioner for us. So he was a great man. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Angus?
Hi there. I came this morning to honor Mr. Flachet. I did not know him very well, only from his work here on this commission, and we tangled a couple of times, but we always ended graciously with a handshake, and I saw him at an unrelated event last month in Bullhead City, and we had some laughs, and I'm glad I had that moment to remember him by. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, if I may add to Supervisor Bishop's comment, I heard from Commissioner Selberg that I guess a few days ago he wanted to, they were asking him to go to the hospital, but then he says he would rather go to the Rotary, function and, volunteer his time over there. So that, that says all about, Carl. So with that, if we can all rise and have a moment of silence, and then we are going to take a short break. Going to have a short break. Thank you.
Good job, Betty.
Thank you.
Get the donuts out of some of their hands?
It's pretty nice. I got my pen back. You got everybody here?
Okay, we have some announcements. Anyone who has not yet signed, please do so at the table located at the lobby. Should anyone wish to speak, please complete a request to speak form, which is also located on the lobby table next to the sign-in sheet. A request to speak form must be completed for each item you would like to speak on, and that's the form that we have. Please note that there are stairs on the right, left, and the center aisle, and we ask you to use caution when you're using the stairs. There is also a ramp located on the audience's left. If anyone has written comments, exhibits, petitions, photos, or letters they intend to present to today's meeting, have 17 copies and give them to the staff member at the back of the auditorium. Cindy, she's back there. If you don't have 17 copies, you may use the overhead camera to present your documents. Please place your document on the podium and line it up, and the arrows indicated on that podium is there. If you want your documentation to go on record, you must hand them to the clerk after your presentation with the agenda item number clearly marked on the documentation. Members of the public cannot speak to staff members that are seated at the tables with microphones during the meeting. If you have questions, please see the staff member located in the back of the auditorium. All the speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to make their presentation statements. Everyone, please turn off all cell phones or place them on vibrate during the meeting. If you must take a call, please leave the meeting area and go outside to have your conversation. We also ask the audience to refrain from talking with one another during the presentation and discussion. Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. The items with a recommendation made by the Commission will be heard by the Board of Supervisors on Monday, March 5th, 2018 at 9:30 a.m. in the same location, with the exception of any continued items. Everyone attending the meeting is asked to remember that the administrative building and campus are tobacco-free areas, which means no smoking is allowed from curb to curb. No food or drinks are allowed in the auditorium except for bottled water. If there are any items remaining on the agenda, the Commission will break for lunch from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. With that, we need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from last month.
I'll make that motion to approve the meetings for last
Second.
month. Thank you.
We have a motion by Commissioner Walker, and we have a second by Commissioner Kelly. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 1.
Item number 1 is an evaluation of a request to rescind and cause the property to revert from an RTT residential travel trailer zone to the previous zone of R1 single-family residential for a portion of assessor's parcel number 40259-105Y as requested by the applicant and having not met the conditions of approval as specified in Board of Supervisors Resolution 2014-126, which approved the rezone of lots 1, 2, 7, 8, 9, 10, 15, 16, 17, and 18 of Block 134, and lots 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13, 14, 19, and 20 of Block 155 in Virgin Acres, Tract Number 1 in the Beaver Dam vicinity. Vesting of the RTT zone was conditioned on the appropriate permits being obtained prior to the placement of a recreational vehicle or the construction of structures. As of today, no permits have been obtained, and the property has not been improved or conditions met. Staff recommends approval of the rescission.
We have no speaker for this item. The Commission, have any discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve for staff recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Abbott and a second by Commissioner Selberg. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 2A.
Item number 2A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from an RDA, Rural Development Area Land Use Designation, to a CR, Commercial Recreation Land Use Designation, and an amendment to the Desert Hills Fire District Area Plan from an RDA, Rural Development Area Land Use Designation, to a CR, Commercial Recreation Land Use Designation, for assessor parcel number 120-23004 in the Lake Havasu vicinity, Mojave County, Arizona. The evaluation is to determine whether approval should be granted to allow for an open-air outdoor bar and recreation facility. The proposed amendments are requested by Christopher E. Blackwell, representing J1K1C2 LLC of Lake Havasu City. The property is approximately 40 acres in size. The site does not appear to have legal access, and the surrounding land uses consist of vacant land and Bureau of Land Management land. Staff recommends approval for the proposed plan amendments.
Thank you. Do you have the applicant here? Would you like to speak now? Please.
I guess I'd like to start. Do you guys have any specific questions you want answered, or you want a brief overview of what?
Does the commission have any questions?
I just had one question. I noticed that there was a letter from, I think it was BLM in the packet about access to the property.
Yes, we're working with BLM for access, and that's kind of our goal, is to have the legal access only on BLM property. And the property is very close to the Peace Trail, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's only BLM property between our property, our private property, and the Peace Trail, and that's kind of how we'd like to route traffic in and out of it, is through the Peace Trail. And we're working with BLM to get the legal access from the Peace Trail to our property, which is less than a mile. And they're working with us, but we don't have anything finished up on it. Good, thank you.
Did we have to state the name and the address? Okay. There are some questions about, like, what project you're planning to have in there. There are some comments that we have here. Could you elaborate on what your plans are?
The plan is to have a very simple building and a covered awning, and it's only going to be open on the weekends, and it's going to cater to off-road traffic. And like I say, our plan and goal is to siphon people the short distance off the Peace Trail to our establishment, and then let them go back onto the Peace Trail and continue their journey, either north or south, whatever direction they're going. And we're trying really hard to be a good steward to the surrounding area. We don't want anybody coming through or having our point of entrance or exit leading to Havasu Heights, because I understand that's a horrible inconvenience and burden the other establishment that tried. And I also want to make it very clear, we have absolutely nothing to do with the other establishment that's out there trying to get going. But I know that's created problems for traffic in Havasu Heights. And our plan is to completely avoid Havasu Heights with coming in and going out through the Peace Trail.
Thank you. Any question from the speaker?
Sir, could you please state your name?
Christopher Blackwell, Blackwell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Michael Weather? Could you state your name and your address, please?
Michael Wetton, 985 Bluebird, Lake Havasu City. I'm in favor of it. I'm actually one of the partners in the project, and we've been trying to establish everything and do everything the proper way, trying to go around and doing everything absolutely proper. We have established a liquor license. We only plan on doing beer and wine. It's not a full liquor bar. We have already obtained that. We've got the property, and we're just trying to go forward and do everything the way we want to do it. So any recommendations that you have us, or any things, any hurdles you need us to jump, we are willing to do it.
Any question from the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Arnest?
Good morning. My name is Gary Arnst. I reside at 4402 East Kayla Way. It's situated just across the section to the east, about 3/4 of a mile from where this proposed change is at. And since access is not really designated yet, I am the closest point of access to this property. Maybe not feasible, but I'm still the closest access, so it concerns me. Also, I moved to this area because it was a rural environment and not much traffic through the area. UTV trails do transgress across my property, originating on the BLM, and access to this proposed change does go to Lake Havasu Heights. It also comes to my property and goes to other private individuals' property. And we think that the traffic would greatly increase because of this bar, and the concerns are that it'll change the whole atmosphere of the area out there from, especially people that have attended the bar will go traveling around and transgress more and change our environment. That's my concerns.
Any question for the speaker? I have a question. You said that the access, does it go through your property or by your property? And how far is your property from the subject matter?
It's half to 3/4 of a mile, depends if you're talking to the center of the property, the edge of the property, whereas to the straight east of the property change. You have to go across BLM land and then to my land. But we have a road to our place that's not really public access, but I'm not positive on that. But that's my location, which is it's much closer than Highway 95 is.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other question? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Blackwell, or? Okay, so you already spoke, right? Thank you.
Yeah, if I could take a second.
State your name again, please.
Christopher Blackwell, 4050 Crest Lane, Lake Havasu City. I just would kind of like to rebut. I understand what the gentleman before me was talking about, and I do agree with him that that's the last thing we want to do is route traffic through people's private property, and that's why we're working so hard for our legal access to come in off of Lone Tree Road, which is a BLM road that's open year-round, and we only have a few hundred yards to connect BLM, the established road, with our property without touching any other private property, and we'll make it a point to try. Obviously, we can't ensure that virtually everybody comes and goes the way we would like, but we would do everything in our best effort to make sure traffic comes and goes towards the Peace Trail that's designated for off-highway use and keep them out of people's personal property. I totally understand the concerns there.
Thank you. A question I have for you is that, you knew that, you need to have a BLM approval or access. May I ask why you didn't apply for getting that access before you apply for, this change?
It's in the works. The application is in the works. It's unfortunate our meeting with BLM is after this date. Trying to get everything compiled and happen at the same time has been difficult. And then, quite frankly, we had issues with the title on the property, and BLM wouldn't, and rightfully so, talk to us until we were the legal owners of the property, just because it was in the works, wasn't good enough to start their procedure. But it is, the application is in and paid for, and we've had the Wentons, they can probably elaborate on where we're at with BLM on the legal access, but it is in the works.
Thank you. Okay, I open it up to the commission for discussion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff. Is this a recommendation of approval based on getting this access?
Commissioner Abbott, the approval for the rezone, which is the next item, is based on the condition that they do get the access. The one that's before you right now is for the amendment to the general and area plan. But for the actual rezone, and the next item is where we have the condition for the access.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Yeah. I have a question for the staff. I understand that in, 2B, you have that requirement. Is there a reason that, we don't have that condition on the 2A? Because we are changing the general plan,
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, conditions like access, et cetera, the departments traditionally put those conditions on the rezone and not the general plan. General plan is more of it's a guideline. It's what could go there. There are access issues, but the applicant also has some alternatives to resolving those issues. The use itself cannot take place, and therefore the impact will not take place until the conditions of the rezone are met.
Thank you. Yeah, in my opinion, this is working backward. So if BLM denies any access, then, even if we approve something like this, how that is going to work out. So, that's why I asked the applicant about it. Why didn't they pursue the BLM first before they approach commission? Open for discussion. If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 2A with staff recommendations.
Okay, if we have a motion to approve, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Melanis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 2B.
Item 2B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor parcel number 120230004 from an AR 36A agricultural residential 36-acre minimum lot size zone to a CRE 36A commercial recreation 36-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for an outdoor bar and recreation facility in the Lake Havasu vicinity. The applicant seeking to establish a licensed commercial bar that caters to the local residents and tourists that utilize off-road vehicles and trails. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions and also with the condition that legal access to the property will be obtained prior to establishing the use.
Thank you. We have the applicant here. Would you like to speak?
I don't know if you, Christopher Blackwell, Blackwell. I don't know if you need the whole stick again. I don't really have a whole lot to add other than we have a couple of different options that we're working. The BLM in and out seems to be our best. And unfortunately, the time restraint in the BLM's application process is slower than we anticipated. But yeah, once we get legal access, and we're working on it, and BLM has been very positive. They so far have done nothing but give us the impression that they're going to work with us, that there's no issues other than just dotting the I's and crossing the T's.
You stated that you have a couple of options. Could you elaborate on that? What other options?
The other option is legal access coming up through the property, because there is actually an established road, a BLM road, Lone Pine Road, that comes out there. The other option would be legal access up through the private property, and that would be the same process as establishing a roadway through the county and getting easements and right-of-ways and
so working with other property owners to provide you with legal access.
That's correct. That's the other, and that is actually underway right now for a different project that we're not involved with. We just signed off that yes, we would go along with it. They were happy. They had no issues with our bar plans, and they were the ones that were trying to establish that right away and that method. We just felt we would be a better neighbor by avoiding going through private property and in and out only through BLM land.
Thank you. Mr. Gary Ernst?
Gary Arnst, 4402 East Kalaway. Yes, I'm glad to hear that there are plans of different points of access, although I would sure like to see a map so I can better understand some of the trails that he lists I'm not familiar with. Probably should be, but I've only been a resident here for 3 years. So for better understanding, I think that we should have had proposals of where these routes were so we could better understand what the impacts would be. It's hard for me to remove my objections when I don't know where these are at.
Thank you. Any question from the speaker? Commissioner Brewer?
Do you have any estimate of how traffic will increase in your area?
I do not know the size or the scope of what the bar will be. If he's trying to tie to the peace trails, then it will not affect my property directly from the peace trails. But with my experience of going out to the Desert Bar out by Parker, people come in from whatever avenue they can, so it isn't always limited to the trail that's designated. So that could affect my property without his intent being there.
Thank you.
Any other question for the commission? Okay. Mr. Michael Weller?
Michael Wetton, Lake Havasu City. The other accesses that are coming in, so basically it's coming in from Lone Tree Road, which is automatically, it's a BLM access, and they've already said that that one's already an established access and they can already overlay our property into there. Where it comes into the corner of the property, that big section, Carl Shea was actually working on the right of easements in that whole area, which basically runs up to the Lone Tree Road into the corner of the big segment of properties, which are 40-acre parcels, running right up the borders of each of those properties, not only to access our property, but to access all the other properties that were out in that area. That's what he was working on. The access that we had asked for from BLM, I don't know if you can see it. How do you do this?
You have to place it on that podium. There is a, mark.
It's a horrible thing, but I don't know if we can see here. Oh.
If you could, our IT needs to, there you go.
All right, let's see here. Let's see where we are. So Lone Tree Road comes in right into this area, which is 95 right over here, comes into the corner of the property. Our property is this corner property right up here. And it's hard to see on this one here, but these are the property lines that he was working on. They go right up the easement, right up along the property line, and then over into the center section. And this is what he was working on before he passed away. Ours is right up in this area. So what we're asking BLM to do, since we already have the right of access into the corner property, we are only jumping 2 properties over. We are asking right of easement right along the property line, right up along BLM themselves, right along this area, so we are not actually on here. Now, it was my understanding, as far as the rest of this is gone, the letters are already in with permission to cross these property lines on their property of right of easement to each of those properties, because it increases the value of those properties, so it benefits everybody in the area to have those right of easements. With us and BLM, what we are trying to do, BLM was going to give up an easement on their side of the property anyways to conjoin with this one. So working with BLM, we're trying to get the right of easement directly to our property. So if these people here have any kind of issues or anything like that with it, we do not really concern them. We can go straight up and into there.
Thank you. Okay. Any question from the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, most definitely, this, just like the staff recommendation is compatible with the land use ordinance that we have, and the position of the commission is to make sure that the item on the agenda basically matches with our land use ordinance. The only issue would be the legal access, and that condition is being imposed on the application. Any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve item 2B with staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Brule and a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 3.
Item number 3 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of a portion of assessor parcel number 324-12047 from an R1 1A single-family residential 1 acre minimum lot size zone to an R1 10M single-family residential 10,000 square foot minimum lot size zone to allow the parcel to be split in the Kingman vicinity. The applicant is seeking to rezone approximately 1,300 square feet of the northwestern portion of the parcel and split it to be its own parcel. The applicant would then combine the southeastern portion of the parcel with an adjacent parcel to maintain the 1 acre minimum lot size that is required on the portion of the parcel not being rezoned. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions and with the condition that the northwestern portion of the property, as defined by a recorded parcel plat, will be rezoned to R1 10M, that no more than 2 parcels may be created by this rezone, and the portion of the parcel not being rezoned must meet the 1 acre minimum lot size requirements by combining with the adjacent parcel.
Thank you, Scott. We have no speaker for this. I have a question, Scott. It says that the property is approximately 1.01 acre. Is that correct? The property is approximately 1.01.
Yes, that's correct. The one that's proposed to be rezoned.
Okay, could you elaborate on that? It's a little bit confusing. So if they take part of it and they want to subdivide, how would that remainder would be still 1 acre?
I don't know if we can get a map up. There's a parcel directly adjacent to it, to the northeast there, that has the house on it. That parcel is what they're looking to combine with the bottom half.
Oh, so they're going to annex that to this property?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's to make it so it stays the 1 acre on the bottom half, and then the top portion is what they're looking to have be its own parcel, and will have a different access on northern. But the bottom portion will be combined with the adjacent lot, and it will maintain the 1 acre minimum.
Thank you. Did you want to make a comment, sir? You raise your hand. Would you come to the podium, please? Could you introduce yourself?
Robert Kantak, 4481 North Able Drive.
Are you the applicant?
Pardon me?
Are you the applicant?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Not a complaint. It's we're combining the 2 lots, and instead of 1,300 square feet, it's 13,000 square feet. Basically, the lot that we're combining would be put at the end of the acre, so it still maintains an acre and a lot stipulation as to keeps. Don't want to open up any can of worms out there. Just move a couple property lines, but maintaining the same thing that's
Thank
there,
you.
just moving it.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Thank you. Okay. Any further discussion by the commission?
Vice Chairman Azarmi?
Yes.
I'd like to make a correction in the staff rec. Yeah, I did mention it's just 1,300, and that's a typo in the staff rec. It is 13,000, sorry.
13,000, I saw that, you know. Any comments, any discussion? If not, I entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Second motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Silberg, and we have a second by Commissioner Abbott. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 4.
Item number 4 is an evaluation of an amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, Section 37L, home occupation, to allow updates to be made to the home occupation ordinance to assure compliance with changes to Arizona Revised Statute 11-820. This item was heard last month and was tabled to today's date. Just as a refresher, what the ordinance, or what this amendment is trying to accomplish is to respond to regulations that were imposed on House Bill 2233 that changed the ARS 11820 restrictions on regulations for home-based businesses. Some of the things that it added to the state statute is that they required that home occupation businesses, we could not regulate them if they did not cause on-street parking congestion. Also, if they, we're required to allow up to 2 individuals that are not residents of the primary dwelling to work or be employed at the home occupation business. We also included a requirement for a Department of Revenue tax identification number. We also added zones A, R2, RM to be included as allowed zones for the home occupation business. We also added the definition of clinic, immediate family, on-street parking congestion. Last month, there was a question brought up by the commission in regards to signage, on whether or not we could restrict the allowed use of having signage. We did speak with our attorney, Bob Taylor, and he was in the opinion that state statute allows for it, and therefore we would also have to allow for the 24 by 24 inch sign. We did make changes to that section of the ordinance, and it now reads, an unlit, non-permanent sign no larger than 24 inches by 24 inches is allowed on the premise during business hours. Window areas must not purposely or intentionally be used as display areas or offer merchandise for sale. We also added that all other signs are prohibited.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I mean, the last time we talked about this thing, and again, kind of a brief summary for the commission and for supervisors and also the people who attend here, is basically we're talking about bringing commercial application into the residential area. There are some long list of businesses that they cannot be in there, but it still it leaves out a whole bunch of other businesses that they can operate in their home, from their home, or maybe their garage, and they can have 2 relative employee and 2 other employees that they can be working at that establishment on the residential area. Problem that I see with this our area is that we are in a very rural suburban area, and I don't believe that the Mojave County is set up to police this kind of activities. And when you're talking about the sign, who is going to it's going to be complaint driven. It is not going to be something that there would be any penalties or anything like that. So that sign can be out there until somebody slaps their hand. That's one problem. The other problem is that there are a lot of businesses that can open up in that. And I understand it's a state situation, and but unfortunately, in my opinion, it's a very vague decision that was made and forced upon county by a state, because as I said, we have a lot of residential areas that, and there is no mention about the CCNR. If this, the state bypasses the CCNR or overrules that, that's something that we need to. I think that the state means any area. So any residential area can basically be imposed to having businesses and having the signs in front, and they can be selling shoes. They can sell a whole bunch of other things from their garage or from their home. So with that, we have 2 speakers on this item. Mr. Tranco. It's okay, take your time, sir. Don't rush. We could take one of our microphones over there. Please state your name and your address.
My name is Louis Tranca. My address is 5373 Bolsa Road, Golden Valley.
Thank you.
The status on home business has surely changed, because when I was in business from my house, no signs, no vehicles with signs, et cetera, et cetera. Let's forget that. I no longer work. Business got closed for no septic, but that's history. I heard that this resolution here is going to raise the permit to $350. Is that correct?
No. As far as I know, but I let the staff respond to it at a later time.
Because when I started my business, I had $600. If the permit's $350, you ain't got nothing left to do business with. Okay, that answers my question.
Thank you. Steve Robinson.
Stephen Robinson, 3967 North Mormon Flat Road in Golden Valley. When I started looking at this section and saw the change, what I was most surprised by was the level of restrictions on home-based businesses. I believe in wise and rational regulations. I really do. And I understand there's a very clear difference between some of our unincorporated housing developments in Mojave Valley, in Butler, and you can't have major businesses running delivery trucks or running appliance repair trucks out of that. But over 90% of the unincorporated private property in Mojave County is acreages of 1 to 640 acres. To have the same uniform policies applying to both of them is patently, it's unfriendly to business. In fact, that's probably, looking at our regulations, having compared them to other counties, we have some of the most restrictive regulations. For example, boy, that goes.
You're fine.
Okay. In Pima County, they have a 1/3 of a page. And it basically says, yeah, you got to run your businesses privately. In Maricopa County, you're allowed to use up to 25% of a lot for storage, just as long as it's not in the front and the sides of the lot. By contrast, Mojave County allows 200 square feet inside a building. In other cities and counties allow subordinate or accessory structures for the use of a workshop or to do some kinds of things. Mojave County says you have to operate it only out of the main structure. So when I said I was exaggerating about the Wright brothers and Compaq Computer founders not building, unfortunately, I wasn't exaggerating. They could not build the airplane. They could not build a portable computer in a detached garage or in a barn. So even though it's not in this subject, I've been in communication with the state legislature about the new proposed bills, and this bill was approved last May, and it went into effect August, so I'm glad they're now addressing it, because his goal, legislator Farnsworth's goal, is to expand the opportunity. I think if we improved an allowance and became more business-friendly for the rural areas, where people will start a business because they can afford it on their private property as opposed to going into a commercial area, it would be really good. And I don't know if you can do it in today's approval, making recommendations, but I strongly encourage the commission to have staff look and compare our rules and say, what can we do to make Mojave County more business friendly? And I think that's what I would love to see.
Thank you. Any question from the speaker?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you. I open it up to the commission discussion. Any comments from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I have a question for staff. As I'm looking at the changes, I'm not sure, it looks like it's both broadening and restricting this permit. I'm not understanding, was it mandated that the number of trips be removed? Because prior to that, it looked as if only 5 residential trips per day were allowed per business, and that was redacted, or taken out, stricken from the proposal?
Yes, Commissioner Rule, as far as we can read from the revised Arizona state statute, we can't limit on the amount of trips to the house that one person can have, but the only thing that it says in the state statute is that we would have to allow it as long as it's not creating on-street parking congestion. So as long as it's not creating that on-street parking congestion, then we would have to allow it. That's why we took out the number of trips allowed in a day.
Not to mention, that would be very difficult to enforce, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the issues that we have is that, it's a one-size-fits-all. So when you have let's say a 40-acre versus like a 5,000-acre or Butler area, which is like 3,500 square foot lot, they're basically the same rule. So, maybe, as I said, unfortunately, state provided us with a very vague ordinance. And I don't know, my understanding is that, county and us, we don't have much of a say on this basically ordinance. Is that correct? I don't know if that is the case or not. Chris or Tim, can you elaborate on that? I know that you talked to our attorney, and I know that the county attorney is here. We can talk to him too.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we cannot be more restricted than the state allows us to. So, and after Mr. Farnsworth's bill became law, we were more restrictive than the state said we could be, and that's the reason for the changes. Some of the changes were addressing things that were allowed in Farnsworth's bill, but quite frankly, we hadn't thought of before, such as it discussed licensure and things like that. Well, we said, what is a licensure? Well, I also might want to remind the commission that as tried to address this issue of rural versus urban, and allows for a wider range probably the main difference between the two, and this is the difference we made in the post on ourselves, is the cottage industry is obtained through a special use permit. The home occupation. Required by the state. I would also remind the commission that neither the home occupation nor the cottage industry are meant to, they're not isolated parts. In many regards, they're meant to work together.
Thank you. Director Walsh, do you have any comments?
I think Chris, Vice Chair Azarmi, appreciate it. Basically, as both Chris and Scott alluded to, what we did was we looked at the changes in state statute, basically made our ordinance compatible with state statute. So we revised it to where we would be in compliance with what the state statute was. So a lot of it we didn't touch because that was what was previously approved. The portions that were previously approved that were in conflict with state statute, that's what we've revised through this change.
Any question, any other comments? So my question for the if I may ask the county attorney, actually, since he's here, we cannot make any changes to this state statute. Is that correct? Sorry to put you on a spot. I saw you there.
I'm glad I could be here, Vice Chairman.
State your name.
Yes, it's Ryan Esplin, Deputy County Attorney for the Mojave County Attorney's Office. I was asked to come in here briefly to try to answer any questions on this specific issue. Can you please state the question again, Mr. Azami?
The question is that, we see this one-size-fits-all for, it's a very vague ordinance that's been imposed by a state to the county. And we do have a very variety of situations in Mojave County. We have rural, we have suburban, we have urban. And right now what we have is that, this is applicable to all applications, which is not suitable in a 10-acre, rural, maybe it would work, but in a planned community, let's say 3,500 square foot or 6,000 square foot residential, it might not, be applicable or it might not work. So do we have any say? So can we manipulate it or do anything to protect some of those, situations that we have?
The county and the Planning and Zoning Commission, Planning and Zoning Commissions only have that authority that's been given to them from the legislature.
Right.
Legislature has the authority, and they say, okay, planning and zoning, this is the authority that you have. So you'd have to look at the specific state statute that we're talking about. And I think I saw a copy. Can I grab that real quick? So looking at the specific state statute to answer that question, because sometimes a statute will say, planning and zoning has this authority, or county has this authority to do this. The first section here says, any ordinance authorized by this chapter shall not restrict or otherwise regulate the owner of a home-based business. So that is a broad brush, unfortunately.
That's exactly. Okay.
That is, and I hate to give you the bad news, but that is the bad news. It's a very broad brush, and any ordinance authorized by this chapter shall not restrict. So that means we cannot do it. End of story. Then it goes to the various different things that say what they shall not restrict.
So basically, the board of, obviously we understand the commission here is the advisory board, and then the commission, the board of supervisors, they cannot make any alteration to it, that they have to accept it because it's a state.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
We tried. Well, with that, if
Any
there's
other
any
questions?
further discussion, I'm sorry, if
Any
any
other-
other question for the deputy? No? Thank you. Thank you for your time. Well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4 with staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and a second by Commissioner Gordon. Is that what you?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Gordon, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Item number 5.
Item number 5 is discussion and possible action on an amendment to Mojave County Ordinance Number 2010-10 to include new fees, fee increases, and fee restructuring for services provided through the implementation of the Mojave County zoning ordinance, including but not limited to the automation fees, and to include new fees, fee increases for services provided through the implementation of the Mojave County Land Division regulations formerly included in Mojave County Ordinance 2010-07.
Thank you.
Now, last April, the department brought a set of fee changes to this commission. And basically asked the commission to weigh in on them. A public hearing was not held at that point in time because the public hearing was actually before the Board of Supervisors. After the commission made recommendations on the fee ordinance, there was a 60-day notification process that has to take place. We completed that 60-day notification process, and the fees went to the Board of Supervisors on April 7th of 2017. Fees went into effect September 7th, 2017, and then the Board of Supervisors rescinded those fees, I believe on November 6th of 2017, and instructed staff to go out on to complete a citizen participation program that they approved. The department presented a citizen participation program to the Board of Supervisors at their December 2017 meeting, and it was approved. That public participation program included, I believe, 4 public meetings with the public. We ended up holding 5. We held 1 in each of the main cities and 2 in the Arizona Strip, 1 in Colorado City, 1 in Beaver Dam. There were a total of 17 participants. We did collect comments from each one of those meetings. The department also set up a website that you can link to from our main page. We also set up a email address for just comments on fees. That is also can be linked, you can link to that email from the fee page that we set up. We have received a number of comments through a variety of sources. We, I think, received to date 8 letters, 8 written letters. 7 were included in your package that in the actual book itself. The 8th is in your folder. We received that just the other day. Now, if the Commission would indulge me, I'd kind of like to break this presentation up into two sections. One of which are what I would call entitlement fees. What is the fee for a rezone? What is the fee for a subdivision? And then separately talk about the automation fees. In your packet, there was a memorandum explaining the process that I just relayed to you, as well as there were 3 attachments to that memorandum. In fact, there were 2 memorandums. There was one for the entitlement fees and one for the automation fees. And then there were 3 attachments. Attachment A was the comments that we received. In there, we included the comments that that were stated at the November 6th meeting of the board, as well as those comments that we received, both written and stated during the public participation program. Also, we included a category there of other, which are comments that we know were made, but not comments that were made, but not really sure where we heard them. So we included responses to all of those. Exhibit B, the second attachment, is basically some alternatives that we came up with, and I will go through what those alternatives are and why, how we came up with them. Now, my first question to the commission is: do you want me to go through the original ordinance that was placed before the Board of Supervisors on October 7th? Or excuse me, on August 7th, because that's the ordinance that's in your package. If you would like me to go through that, it's been some time since the commission's heard that.
Commission, what do they like?
I'm good.
Everybody is okay with it?
I don't think it's necessary.
There is no
All right.
need for it, okay?
Right. I will let, unless requested, I will let each commissioner read Exhibit A on their own, unless you want me to go through the comments. I can summarize the comments. As you would expect, the comment says, these are too much money. Okay, yeah, that one we expected. There were a few types of permits that obtained or garnered more comments than others. One in particular was the price of a permit for a single recreational vehicle on a single lot. We've received more comments on that one, I believe, than any other. There were comments about we're charging more than adjacent counties. There's some truth to that, and I'll kind of go through that because, we've been telling you we're at parity with similar counties. And we're in one of those really strange situations where both of us are right. Coconino and La Paz charge some of the lowest fees in the state. But some of the counties that we're most similar to charge some of the highest, and that creates a large range. So I'll start off with talking about kind of the fee alternatives and with a brief explanation on how we got to those alternatives. And I might say there's nothing magical. Right? These are, there's a lot of subjectivity to them. So, I want to impress on the commission, well, if you're thinking, well, I looked at it a different way, okay. If you think we ought to change some of these, and there's also no prohibition to doing some mix and matching as well, okay. On the entitlement types, we recommended originally in the original ordinance not to separate out commercial from residential. We didn't see a lot of difference in how much time and effort it took us to process a rezone for a commercial development versus a rezone for a residential. However, as a rule, the cities themselves, one of the benchmarks we used in determining, how close we fit into other cities and counties, benchmarks we used were included, they weren't limited to, but they did include the 3 cities. And the 3 cities have typically made a distinction, particularly Bullhead and Kingman, between residential and commercial. So one of the options was to reduce the commercial permit, reduce the residential permit we use the city of Kingman kind of as guidance. They're $1,000 now. They're currently trying to raise their residential permit to $1,500. Also, some areas, if you only have 5 acres, it's one price. If you have over 5 acres, or if you have 20 acres, it's a different price. So when you look at residential rezones, you'll see 2 alternatives there to consider. One is $1,500. Here again, there's no magic about that number. If you're thinking, well, that doesn't cover the costs that they tell us they incur, that's correct. It does not. But there's nothing in law that says the county has to cover those costs. The county can decide for many reasons, not to do so. If the county decides rooftops are important and they serve a governmental nexus, they can decide to cut those fees back. Alternative 2 was the breakdown by acreage. 1 acreage, 10 acres or less is $1,000. Greater than 10 acres is $2,200. Those are just proposals. Commercial rezone. Commercial rezones where we found the greatest disparity. If you take a look at the benchmarks we use, they range from $480 to $27,000. An option for the commission to consider to the $2,200 proposed by staff and finance is 10 acres or less, $1,800, greater than 10 acres, $2,400.
Chris, may I ask the commission, I assume that, we all reviewed the item by item. I believe that we need to be more specific about how you arrive to these, the logic of your calculation. in terms of like, because I assume, and this is my understanding, that it has to do with the service that you provide. So it has to overcome the cost of your overhead, for that reason. So I think the dollar amount, we all looked at it and studied it. I believe that we are looking for some reasoning behind, these markup.
Okay, some of the reasoning is first of all, the fees that you're looking at were set somewhere between 2005 and 2008, depending upon which fee. At that point in time, there was not an attempt to fully recoup the cost of processing those fees. I think we shot for somewhere around 60-70%. So even when those fees were established, we were not recouping the entire cost of processing the permit. Our instructions in this exercise were to recoup, to develop a price that did recoup the full cost of processing those permits. We worked with the Office of Management and Budget that was later assumed by the Finance Department to work with them, come up with estimates of staff time and we primarily worked on staff time and not supplies or fuel costs. So came up with an estimate of staff's time that were engaged in processing these permits.
So that information is available?
That information is available.
I think it would really be helpful if the commission would be able to have those information so they know, how, the calculation was there. I mean, again, please continue, but I'm just saying that, maybe that would be helpful.
We can certainly make that available to you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Isn't that kind of already available in the sense that the current fee is X amount and the proposed amount is X amount, which they're saying to us that that is what it takes to cover it?
Yeah.
Now,
And
do we have to have hours? What are we going to get that will tell us any more than that? That's my question.
Okay.
And I'm not, I question fee raising as much as anyone.
Let
But
me,
while I'm talking,
go ahead.
while I'm talking, you established these fees between 2005 and 2007, according to what I'm looking at. And all these years, there's been times that's not covering the cost. Where you been getting that additional cost?
General fund.
Mr. Abbott, was that a question directed towards staff?
Or, yes.
Could you go ahead and address your question one more time?
Now, that's a question for staff.
I know, go ahead. What's your question? That's what.
Question is, the current fees were set, and obviously, you say you haven't been able to cover the cost with those fees. Where are you getting the funds to cover them?
Mr. Abbott, members of the commission, the expenses of processing a permit that are not covered by the fee we charge are covered by the general fund.
That's what I thought.
Yeah,
It's
and the
pretty
general
obvious,
fund
yeah.
has many
Just wanted
sources.
to hear that.
Yeah, ad valorem taxes, which is property tax, is probably one of the
Which
big
is
sources along with other
Taxpayers
sources.
that all people in the county that pay taxes
Mm-hmm.
goes into.
Okay,
And
Councilor Brewer? Sorry.
one of the things I want to point out is I believe that in April, we did provide the spreadsheets.
They're in here too.
Yeah, and they're in there too, yeah, okay. I thought we provided the spreadsheets that showed how the costs were developed.
Thank you. Commissioner Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hesitant to move forward with this and actually want to move to table it until next month, and if we have a discussion time, I will explain that.
Commissioner Brewer, what are you, in these 30 days, what do you think can be accomplished?
As I look at the spreadsheet and all of this information, which I can see the work that staff has gone through, and I think it's outstanding, there are still some things that aren't answered for me. And I think it's because when I look at the county budget to look at the overall expenditures that we're trying to cover, I'm not noticing any service level analysis. So as I'm looking at our staff report, I see building permits by calendar year. There were 3,500 in 2005. Looks like they're about 2,300 most recently. I am betting that since 2005, our costs have not gone down 40%, but our activity's gone down 40%. I'm really interested to know what our cost is for every permit that we process. And that's just one, for instance. What I'm thinking is the fees may be justified based on the numbers that are here as far as the philosophy of cost recovery. But what costs are we recovering? I'm not getting a good idea as to how the budget itself is substantiated. So I would like a little bit more information, be able to understand that a little bit better. And the other thing is there are kind of two things going on when I look at all those comments. One is we talk about cost recovery, which I totally understand, but then the other thing is Board of Supervisors may decide or determine to subsidize various fees. If we've gone from a $60 to a $350 permit, I'd like to know the number of permits issued and why it costs that much to process those permits. And I'm not understanding that very clearly on some of these issues, so I'd really like to get that type of information so we can feel solid about moving this forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
If I may, Commissioner Abbott, about your comment that you made, one thing that I saw in this proposal before us, and I mentioned to you and I mentioned to Director Walsh, in my communication that I had with him, is, the cost of a processing that they have to do on, let's say, a permit. Like, give you an example, as Chris mentioned about the travel trailer, is a good example. Is that the only way to do it on the annual basis? Or maybe that cost can be, because, we have a lot of people that are using it as their main residence, and, we recognize that. Maybe that can be extended over a longer span of time. So the cost to the county would not be there, but at the same time, the cost to the clients or the people, applicants, would be also be distributed over a number of years. What those number of years are can be, discussed, and would be 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, whatever it is. So that would be helping the, the applicant, as well as helping the county budget not to spend time on it. I can see, for example, here it says $350 first year, and the second year would be $50. Well, we all know that the cost of the second year is going to be exceeding $50, because going through like a couple of different, flood or whatever the other departments that they have, the manpower spent on it is going to be more than that. But do we need to, if the condition has not changed, do we need to do, like every 12 months, go back and check that or do that? So there are some issues on that I believe that, needs to be, beside the budget, the dollar amount, the inflation, the cost. I think that, that's my question for Director Walsh, is have we looked at it to see if we can streamline it to be able to bring the overhead down or extend some of these times, so it would help, the applicant as well as the county?
Well, I'd like to respond to that.
Okay.
I couldn't agree more, and from the comment I got, and I'd read some things before the last meeting you had in this building, and I was here, about the guy living in a 29-foot trailer paying. I think we should look at getting rid of some of those, period. We don't need those. I mean, I see no reason we need to have those permits that we were getting $75 for, I think at one time, was a small amount. And why does a person have to get a permit to cover a small little mobile home that's leaking? You know, why does he have to get a permit to patch and cover the leaks? There's some of those things that I fully agree should just be you haven't said that, but I think they should have just gotten rid of. Now, the thing I get down to saying what they're presenting to us is it's being paid for one way or another by taxpayers like you guys and all these instead of the person who's asking for the permit. So I see a lot of problems in this that should be worked out better than, I don't know how to say better than they are.
Yeah, that's
I
my
just see
question.
a lot of problems.
Yeah, that's my question to Director Walsh about, have we taken the time to look at it to see if we would be able to streamline some of the process?
I think he's
to bring-
taken the time. They've had these meetings in 5
I
different
know, but
places.
they have a lot in their plates. Director Walsh?
I don't want to answer for him.
See if I can get this turned on here. Vice Chairman Azarmi, members of the commission, appreciate the comments and the questions. I'll try and, I've typed a few up, so if I miss anything, please let me know. We have gone through, basically the process that was before us was, I'll address first the streamlining. We did go through and look at a number of things that we could streamline. What I would like to address, though, is the task before us was to take the ordinance that we have and the zoning ordinance, the subdivision regulations that we've got, and address the fees that were assigned to those processes. So I think there's two questions. There's one of, okay, what is the process? And that's actually outlined through the zoning ordinance, through the subdivision regulations. And the staff's going to jab me later because I'm sure I probably got those names wrong, but but basically we have the ordinances that the county has adopted that has established those processes. This is what shall be done in order to obtain a zoning permit. So this task was basically, okay, for those processes that have been established through ordinance, what does it cost the county to perform those ordinance or to perform those services? So in the case of basically in all the fees that were presented, staff has been working with finance and previously the OMB to say, okay, here's the process. This is how many man hours it takes to, it was mentioned the RV permit. This is how many man hours it takes us to accept this permit, to review it, to look at the site, to verify that there's a septic in there, to verify that there's power to the site, all those things, and to make sure that it's a habitable property. So we said, okay, this is the number of hours. So then working, and these are the people that work on it. So then working with finance, they said, okay, based on those hours, this is what it costs you to do that. And that's in the backup, and that's what the proposal is okay, for a near full cost recovery for each of these services provided, this is what it costs the county. And then basically from there, we took those numbers and then compared those to neighboring counties to say, okay, are we in the ballpark? And for the most part, I think what we found is we are. We're in the ballpark. There are some that charge less than us, but that is, as Chris pointed out, and it would be the commission's ability to make those recommendations, and then the board's ultimate say on how much cost recovery we would like to have with these. But basically, our exercise here was to say, okay, these are the processes that have been adopted. In order to proceed through those processes, this is what it actually costs us to do it.
Thank you. Commissioner Brewer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that clearly. There is one component that's missing, however. We're saying we want to recover costs. That's our premise. And we're comparing with other entities. That's a great thing. But the primary thing that we want to know, that I want to know, I should say, I don't want to speak for everyone, is how efficient are we at what we're doing? Because if it costs us $1,000 every time you issue a building permit now, and 15 years ago it was $200, then if I'm recovering costs that actually are questionable. So I'm not feeling confident in those underlying numbers because I'm not seeing comparatively what it is that's being produced. And I would like to get that kind of information so I can feel comfortable. Cost recovery is great, but what kind of costs are we recovering? As I look at these statistics, costs have gone up, but volumes have gone down. So I'm really not clear on whether or not the underlying premise is sound if we don't look at service levels as well as cost recovery in neighboring cities.
Christine?
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, some points I'd like to make, one of which is the staff with a technical advisory committee went through the zoning ordinance in 2015. We took out a lot of what we considered extra stuff. And there were a couple of reasons for doing so. One, our instructions on going through the zoning ordinance was to make it more friendly. The second reason is between 2008 and today, we have lost 1/3 of our staff. And so we were forced to look for economies. Much of what we do is not only driven by our own ordinance, it's also driven by state statute. Many of the, we've had many discussions over the years about, for instance, becoming more efficient on legal advertising. We don't set legal advertising. Legal advertising is set in state statute, and we must follow that. The other thing that influences how we advertise is newspaper deadlines, newspaper requirements. So we also have to meet those. We also do not operate in isolation from other county departments. Mr. Abbott mentioned, why don't we do away with RVs permits? We cannot, because flood control is required to make sure and to basically make sure that those RVs are always roadworthy, ready to go. They do not withstand floods well, so they are required to check, are they in a floodplain? Are they always mobile? We also have requirements with regards to wastewater. And it's the permit that's in the zoning ordinance that makes sure all of those things are required. Could we only check those initially when the RV goes in, and then after that, basically duplicate the permit, and as long as nothing changes, charge a reduced fee? Yes, and that's what's proposed. But, we've had several iterations, I think, over the last 10 years of trying to reduce how long it takes, what's required. But in the end, we do have some parameters that we just have to accommodate.
Thank you. With that, if you don't mind, we have one speaker. I'd like to get him in before we continue. Mr. Robinson? You signed up for item 5, right? Please.
Steve Robinson, 3967 North Mormon Flat Road. My first comment is planning and zoning. Planning is mandated by state statute, 11801. Zoning is optional. Theoretically, we could eliminate zoning and save a whole lot of costs. I'm not recommending that, but because we need wise planning. My second comment is Bullhead City has been waiving commercial fees they're now in their second years. You lower fees to improve demand. By raising fees dramatically, you will lower the demand and you'll lower compliance. Right now, on the travel trailer permit, that's really an outrageous fee. Another area where there's an outrageous fee is the home occupation. That's supposed to go up to $350 as well. You'll have less compliance, you'll have less opportunity, because people I know of right now don't apply for a home occupation permit because they're out in the middle of the pucker brush. So when you start looking at how can we make this county more business-friendly in the unincorporated parts, yes, Ms. Brule, Member Brule, you brought up a great point. How efficient are the costs of operations? Getting back to the first point, part of the funding for planning and zoning comes from the general fund taxes because it is a mandated service. The third area I want to talk about is animal control permits. There's several different regulations and definitions of kennels. They want to raise the price up to $500 for a kennel. Right now, you can get a license for a dog for $29. So and the maximum you can get under a residential permit is 10 dogs. So it'd only be $290. And I don't know why we're wanting to charge $500. Basically, look at ways of reducing the fees to encourage more compliance and encourage of more revenues, but don't try to cover all the costs of planning and zoning with fees, because that's unfair to the service providers when our general fund is supposed to provide it. And building is already covering their fees last year in the last year's budget, so I think that one's already covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy? State your
Good
name
morning.
and
My name
address.
is Kathy Tackett Hicks. I live at 3751 Martingale Drive. Thank you for letting me speak. I spoke at the front. I didn't know if it was going to be a public hearing, so I didn't put in a name. And secondly, that was very nice what you did for Carl. He deserved the recognition and a lot more, and he was a personal friend, and it's heartbreaking. But to get onto this issue right here, I'm very thrilled. The comments coming from the commission right now. Commissioner Brule makes some good comments. I think the staff is in a very difficult situation of trying to come up with fees that work. I have been very hesitant to say anything because I process through the county all of the time. I do have experience in working on these budgets. I've been a city manager, community development director, economic development chairman. I have worked all over the Southwest. I have worked in almost all of the counties recognized here. I've worked in Mexico, and I don't say that because I'm so wonderful. I say that because I have a tremendous amount of personal and professional experience in trying to come up with these. And I would offer a couple of things. When I first looked at this, and again, I don't want to say anything, it's not beating up the staff or anybody else, but it appears to me from the developers that we're getting nickel and dime a lot. There's a lot of fees that are on here that are not recognized in other cities. I am concerned about like a home occupation of $350, and I would maybe we can look at why it is that we want to permit them anyways. In the city, I've had a home permit for 20 years. It cost me $29 or $31. That's it. And I think it's fine for the city and the county to have a database of these are our home occupations, so if something gets out of hand, they can go out. But literally, I mean, I've had it. It costs nothing. I do it. If I lived in the county for $350, and I would wonder what I was getting out of that, I think you'd be inclined to say most people wouldn't say anything. They'll just keep going. So there's probably a value there. On some of the fees for rezones for residential, I would remind you that most of those are just individual residents. They are not big developers in most cases that I work with, and I have processed literally hundreds in Mojave County and all over the Southwest. Most of those are just people. I'm a huge private property proponent. I believe they have every right to split that property if it doesn't hurt a neighbor and they want to expand, and as a result of that split, you can now put 2 houses instead of 1. The taxpayers may be paying $400 to process the rezone as their proportionate share that the county general fund doesn't cover, but every year after that, $800 a year for that single-family residence come back. I believe that there's a balance there. I think what makes it difficult is the Board of Supervisors has not been clear in what it is that their philosophy is for fees. Bullhead City has been very successful in theirs. I'm not suggesting we waive our fees, but I am saying that there are different philosophies, and the county doesn't seem to have a clear one on how they want to approach development. I do believe some of these So let me jump back. So residential, I think it would be a mistake, it's my personal and professional, to raise it that high. I think commercial is a different beast. Commercial rezones are done for speculation and for development. That is a risk associated with development that's borne by developers and professionals. I think that's more appropriate if you're going to raise a cost. Residential, I don't believe it's there. To me, it doesn't matter if it takes the same amount of time. I'm saying we have to look at the value for what we're getting. A special use permit, $2,200, I think that's a poor value for the consumer. A minor general plan. Those minor general plans are processed concurrent with the rezone. Exactly the same process. Now, 300 square foot, why are there two separate fees? I say to myself when I look at this, why are there two separate fees? Should they just be one process? You know what I mean? We should look at those costs. When I first looked at the cost for the county, I thought, we're doing something wrong. They're way too high. But I do know that finance and human resource and all those overhead costs, well, heck, they may represent 40% of the permit cost. I don't know. I haven't seen a breakdown or something. And if that's the case, the discussion to the general public needs to be, hey, guys, it really only takes us this long, 60% of this cost. It really doesn't take us $2,500 to process a rezone. Because when I look at that, I say, that's totally crazy. We're doing something wrong. It really only costs us $1,300, but guess what? The overhead costs and all these other things, this is our total cost. I think that would help a lot. So I think we have to look at the value for the dollar. I'm not afraid of developers paying for whatever they do, okay? That doesn't scare me. Developers will pay. They will pay a lot, but they have to get a value for it. When I process in Mojave County, particularly a subdivision, I have to get 20 or 21, I did some breakdowns before where I had to get like between 19 and 24 approvals to get my subdivision done. Now that included ADQ, ADWR, the propane company, the utility company, the fire district issue, the water company. I had to bill my own half the time. Sewer, got to bill my own half the time and process through the state and the county. The value for working the value in the county is very difficult. When I go to the city, it costs a lot less, and guess what? I submit my final plat. Okay, my preliminary plat and final, I can be done with my subdivision process between 7 months and a year. In Mojave County, I have worked on projects. My God, it's like being, tied around the neck and drugged through 6, 7, 8, 9 years. I don't blame the county for that, okay? I blame the developers as well. But the process is so cumbersome and burdensome. So the value for doing a subdivision in the county is a lot less than it is for doing it somewhere else, and it's cheaper other places. And the last comment, when I look at all these other areas like Flagstaff, when we're equal to payments there, the value for working in those areas is a lot greater than it is in the county. Okay, the overall opportunity and the perception that there's unlimited gold to be made here through everything is something that we kind of latch on to in developers. But the fact is, the big developers and stuff, they'll go somewhere where they get value and that there's a reasonable end in sight and they feel they can get through it. And in Mojave County, that's not always clear. So anyways, I say I hesitate. Whatever fees you make, I'm going to pay them. Okay, and we're going to proceed. But when the fees first came out, and I was so thrilled when the board brought that back, because I thought we'd made some grave errors. I'm just thrilled you guys are just looking at it more. Forgot what I was just going to say. When it first came out, I can tell you people in my profession, I'm the only one that does exactly what I do, but all around, literally I heard them on the phone telling their developers, do not do any more in the county. Do not do any more. There's zero value there. And I was shocked. I was shocked to hear that. But I tell you that so that we can be smarter when we come through some of this stuff and recognize that. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you. I know that there was a lot of discussion. Director Walsh, would you like to make some comments on some of these before we open it to the commission?
Vice Chair Azarmi, thank you for the opportunity. Again, I would just go back to the excuse me, the department, along with the finance department, basically we looked at the processes that we were doing. As Chris pointed out, we've gone through and streamlined a lot of those processes already. The point of what it cost us back in 2005 versus what it costs us today, I think we could easily look at what a lot of things cost us back in 2005 to what a lot of things cost us today, and that price difference in 13 years has changed quite a bit. The minimum wage back then versus the minimum wage today, as well as the resources, basically anything, everything's gone up with that. And at the time, those costs back in 2005, as Chris pointed out, were a portion of what it took to recoup it. And these, I think the point was made that are we wanting to fund all of planning and zoning off of these fees? And that's actually not the case. There are, as was pointed out, there are a number of mandated services that we provide that are not included in these. And that's just part of being planning and zoning. A lot of our zoning enforcement, there's no fee for that. There's just a lot of them. So basically what we're looking at is what it costs us to provide these services. So these fees are only related to those services provided. Ultimately, basically right now we're recovering, I think it was about 30% of what it costs us to provide these services. That remaining 70%, as was mentioned before, is coming out of the general fund. Is that wrong? I'm not here to say it is. That's definitely a decision for the board to make as far as, how they want to structure those fees and what type of cost recovery is to come out of that. I think that I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Walsh, the part that, I asked you about this, so basically what I'm hearing from your comment is that you and your staff already looked at the structure of processing, and you already think that, this is the streamlined, and it is basically minimizing any overhead with the providing the service back. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
I'm not
Has it been looked at, or is it like, based on the 2005, 2007, we are just making adjustments on the value?
No, from 2005 to today, there's been a number of changes, as Chris pointed out. And am I going to say that we're as efficient as we possibly can be? No, there's always room for improvement, and definitely we will do that. And as we find those opportunities to improve, definitely we would reflect that, and bring that back to you and say, hey, we don't need this much for this fee anymore, because we've been able to change our process. We've changed the ordinance in a way that these things aren't required, so we don't need to put that much effort into it. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Abbott?
I have a question for Tim. Are we going forward with what this says here as an example? Temporary recreational vehicles was 50, and we're going to change it to 350? Is that what we're going to send forward, if we send it forward to the Board of Supervisors? I had a comment from someone that told me that was one thing you're going to look at.
Commissioner Abbott, yeah, basically what staff has done is the initial recommendation that we have is this is the cost to do business. What we provided was alternatives for the commission's consideration that with respect to the RV permits, as I think Chris pointed out, that initial establishment of an RV as a residence, the effort in that initial establishment of that is quite a bit more on the renewals, as we're required to do in order to meet flood control requirements. That submittal isn't as extensive as that initial one. So what we found is, what we could do is charge that initial $350, and then on those renewals, we could actually afford to drop that down in order to save some money on that. So basically what that would mean is anybody that already has an RV permit right now, going forward, they would just look at that renewal fee. They wouldn't be subject to that $350. That would only be for new RV permits.
Commissioner Brewer?
So once again, what I'm looking for, that I'm not saying, I'm not implying that there are inefficiencies at all. what I am stating is that the service level and the service levels that are being met with these dollars are not clearly represented. So I'm not seeing exactly what, for instance, on this $350 permit, how many of those do you issue every year? If you issue 100 of them, that's what, one full-time employee just processing. I realize there's more than one employee doing that. But if over the years we've done 100 every year, we've been subsidizing at the same level.
I've got it right here.
Do you understand where I'm coming from? I'm not really understanding where the $350 even came from.
Basically, what that 350 was is we worked with finance and we said, in order to process an RV permit, we accept the application. It's reviewed by this staff person. It's reviewed by flood control. We send it to the various agents. It's reviewed by environmental quality. It's reviewed by these different divisions in order to verify that it's okay to have this RV there. And then we issue the permit. So we looked at the hours that it took. Okay, accepting it, we passed it on to these different divisions. It took this much time to do in order to submit it.
Different divisions within this department?
Within the county. We looked throughout the county, basically any.
So you're trying to recover the costs of various departments, not just the building and zoning?
What we're looking to recover is the cost to process that permit. So basically, yeah, not just located within Development Services Department, but the cost for the county to.
So you're looking at direct costs and overhead costs?
Correct.
What's your overhead rate?
I don't have that right in front of me, I'm sorry. But about 40% is.
And it compares with other counties and cities?
I think we're actually.
It would just be nice to see certain specifics in a certain format to give me confidence, at least, that that underlying work is represented so that I can understand what it is that I'm moving forward. Right now, I feel like I have a lot of questions because I'm not seeing.
To answer on the number of travel trailer permits issued, in 2017, we had just under 160. We had 158. So that's how many RV permits that we issued last year. So, but yeah, as far as, I guess I'm not following completely on the question. As far as what we're presenting is we looked at, and this has gone since 2014 to today, or 2013 to today, working with Office of Management and Budget, working with finance. Here's what it takes to process these permits.
Right, but I don't see that.
Okay.
How do I know what went into that? Isn't there?
That should be, I believe that's in the backup as far as what we've.
I haven't seen.
Oh, okay.
I haven't seen that.
We can provide.
I don't understand where those numbers are coming from. Why it would take $350 worth of work to approve this trailer permit? I'm not really understanding that.
Okay.
And if there is if we're looking at a general policy from Board of Supervisors, that general policy or that general direction was see if we can recover more costs and be, I guess, competitive with other entities. And so overall, you have that as a narrative. I don't know to what extent that is for each one of these fees. Are we looking at full cost for each one of the fees that have been presented? I think that general overhead cost is really interesting to me because how fat is that? Are we loading our fees heavier than other entities are? I just have a lot of more detailed question. It would be nice if we had this in a report format where I could see the volumes that were going along with it and how some of those calculations were substantiated.
Chairman Nazarmi, Commissioner Brill, would basically as part of our analysis of the hours and what it cost us, would you be looking for each permit fee that we've got proposed there, would you be looking for the number of hours involved on that, or what? I guess I'm not sure what exactly you're after.
I'd like to see comparatively what it cost to issue a permit last year, this year, what you propose it to be next year, so that we know that what this number is and that the number you're proposing is consistent with what you expect your cost to be over time and what they have been over time. So, I mean, if I looked at the county budget and I could see service levels, in other words, when I look at the budget for this, so that I'm trying to ferret it out even on my own, I don't see the number of permits issued compared to the cost to issue those permits. So I'm not seeing any information that substantiates any of this over time.
Isn't that, the Director Walsh, you stated that the county budget office and the staff, they work together, and you do have that information available.
Right.
Which basically, my thinking is that if you share that, and again, Commissioner Burrows, her qualification is obviously, she was heavily involved with the finance, the department of the city of Bullhead City.
Right.
So this is basically her forte. So I think that, that would be really helpful. The only comment that I have about, this travel trailer, because we're coming back to it, first of all, I assume that the environmental health, when they apply for a septic permit, they charge for the septic permit.
Right.
So their service is being basically covered with the separate permit, which is the septic tank permit. Is that correct?
The septic tank is covered through
I know,
that
so
septic
that, I'm saying that, and the other thing that I brought up at the beginning of the meeting is, the very first time that they go in and apply, for the permit, yes, they need to make sure that they're not in the floodplain. But unless something severe changes, if they're not in the floodplain, why do we need to revisit that on the 12 months per period or every year? Why can't we just, giving them some more time and then provide it, unless there's something changing that is status? So that fee that you're imposing on your staff on the annual basis can go away. So that was what my question was, that have we looked into these examples? And I see a lot of other issues, especially on the building department. I see that, additional fees, like for the reinspection fees and things like that, that is gonna cause additional work for the building department as well as, so that was my question about that one. And I think Supervisor, I guess, wants to speak. Please. It's going to come before you, no time, ma'am.
Well, thank you for this discussion. It's really interesting, and it's probably one we should have had before we entered into all of this, and I apologize for that. I've been hearing that you said that you were instructed. Who were you instructed by to do this? Because I don't believe it came from the board.
I don't know that I instructed, I'm not sure.
You said that was your instruction. That was your instruction, is to go back and find out how much it was going to cost for fee recovery, to recover the fees that, the costs of doing business. When and who directed that?
This started actually prior to me coming into the department, but my understanding is when it began, the initial review of the fees, I don't know that it was instructed to do that, but I know that was the previous director's intent, was to establish these fees, and that was our intent as well, as to present to the board, this is the cost of doing business. Now, whether the board decides as to...
And that gets to what Kathy said, and she said something so right, spot on. She said, the philosophy of the fees has to come from the board, and we haven't done that, and shame on us. So I think that what should happen is this should come back, and that should be the discussion first. This is almost like the tail wagging the dog. We should have that discussion about what kind of county we want to be. Do we want to be one? And, and then if you do charge these fees, what's that mean for the general fund? What's that mean for your budget? We haven't had those. And that was what was so worrisome to me, and why I worked so hard to bring this back. So my recommendation would be, again, is to whatever you have to do, continue our table and, push it to us. Have us do our jobs, which is to say what the philosophy of Mojave County is. Because like Kathy said, we don't want to scare people away. We want to give them the value. So let's figure out what this value is and go from there, and how much we want to subsidize and stuff like that. We never had that discussion. I would like that discussion. I hope the other supervisors would as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Matt? In addition, I think, so there really are 2 points. One, what is our policy going to be going forward, and what are we trying to accomplish by doing these fee changes? And the second thing that would give more kind, there's so much work that's already gone into this, so I'm not making a statement about what to do with that going forward. It's a great foundation, but I think it would give the commission, the public, and the board a lot more confidence if in whatever presentation we had each fee on one worksheet that showed histories and service levels that went right along with that, and also looked at the components of what it is that we're asking, what it is that we're trying to recover, why, and what is that process. Because if people can understand it and see it, they're much more likely to accept it. Yeah,
Exactly. So I hope that whatever you do, give back to the board would include that. Thank you very much.
Well, one thing I can tell you is that, if you are going to just table and come back 30 days from now and we would be in the same spot, it's not going to be productive. So maybe, what I'm hearing from Commissioner Breaux is that, we need to go back or ask for direction from the supervisors to be more clear. And again, one thing Kathy mentioned, and I echo that, is staff and Director Walsh is placed in a very odd spot to come up with something which, it seems like a 2 equation and 10 unknowns. It seems like it's very difficult to solve any problem like this. So maybe as also Supervisor Angus mentioned, maybe we should send them back to them to be more clear of what exactly they're expecting from a staff to be able to provide, with some constraints, meaning like, boundaries, like travel trailers, like anything like that, streamlining it or coming up with some clear guideline that we would be able to, bring back to us. Maybe that would be the case.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would withdraw, which died for lack of a second anyway, my motion to table, and I would move.
There was no motion yet. You just made a comment.
I was making a comment. Thank you.
So that's fine.
Well, then I would move to send this back to the Board of Supervisors requesting guidance with regard to their policy, and the policy meaning the degree of clear, crisp direction with regard to the fee recovery, and what our policy is regarding that, and any kind of subsidies and what level of subsidy might be recommended. In addition, possibly some more clarification on what kind of justification or substantiation staff needs to provide for everyone to be able to review.
Is there any?
That's long and drawn out.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Commissioner Gordon?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to add, after Kathy had made a few comments there, I'd made some notes, and Supervisor Angus, I think, hit the nail on the head. I think we're put in the wrong spot here. This staff has done, I think, an incredible job and been asked to, whether they were asked or not, they've done an incredible job to compile all of this information, both historic and current, and compare and contrast what's been going on and what the fees are. It's incredible data that, we can sit here all day and think this is too high or it's not too high and all these different items. But at the end of the day, that data is going to be invaluable to the board to try and understand what's going on and what direction we should go. And really, it is. We need clear direction from the board as to where does the county want to go in the future? Do we want to be pro-growth on the commercial side? Do we want to be, low and subsidize the residential side? What do we want to do? And I don't think we can do our job until we have that clear direction. So I'm glad we're arriving at that, because I think that's where we need to go.
Sounds like a second, right?
That is a second, correct.
Any other comments?
I'd like to comment to Michael's his comments. I agree with that, and I agree, and I'm glad there's two supervisors here and a county manager. I think sending it back like you have, and I sympathize with all these meetings they've had. 5 meetings, I believe, with 17 people attending. I don't believe much has been accomplished. You just tell them what it's costing and what we need to cover the cost, no solutions. So I feel the same way you do. I've just been totally confused on what are we doing other than saying, well, they need this much cost. If they don't get it here, they're going to take it out of the general fund. So
Yeah, and I don't believe that the commission is really has the time nor has any opportunity to dissect it and have any information. And I really like for next time, if we have the opportunity to have those backups or information from the county budget office to be able to accommodate that. So we look at the metrics and all that. So basically, with that, is there any further discussion? So we have a
call for a vote.
You have a motion by Commissioner Brule, and we have a second by Commissioner Gordon. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Vice Chair Zarmi, just so I'm clear, the motion was basically to request from the board direction on how to proceed with these. Is that correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that, we are asking Board of Supervisors to provide a clear, crisp direction and, in terms of the organization, what exactly their goal and objective is, what is expected from the staff, from the prices, from their value structure and everything. And I'm hoping that, they would include some, method or maybe, bring in individuals that, they're available in the, the county, like Kathy, like Commissioner Brule and all that they have some expertise, or many other ones that, they're available to be able to maybe work together to look at maybe some other box approach, streamlining the thing. I mean, that's my recommendation, but again, it's up to the supervisors to make that distinction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Where are we at right now? I think with that, we are completed the item 5. We are called to the public, right? Call to the public. Any items that are not on the agenda, you can speak. You raise your hand. No, you don't want to speak?
That was a high five.
Well, thank you. I guess I'll make a motion for the meeting to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Abbott, a second by Commissioner Walker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Commissioner